Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Soon we will be starting with our next panel discussion of the day. So till then, we'll wait here till all the panelists and the moderator join us. Till then, you can take the poll, which is given to the right of your screen. If you will click on the poll section, so you will find a few questions there and you can take the poll. Also, so meanwhile, our panelists and the moderator are joining us here. Yes, so I have been asking like a few questions from you. So just let me know in yes or no. Please answer it in yes or no. So are you satisfied with this conference? Like, so whatever has happened till now, please let me know in the chat section by answering in yes or no. Are you finding it useful? Are you, is this conference has been able to enhance to your already vast knowledge base? Please let us know. And how can we make it better? If you are facing any problem, you can also let us know in the chat section. I guess we have our panelists joining us here. Hi, everybody. Welcome on board. Well, soon we'll be beginning with our panel discussion. I guess we still have 2 to 3 minutes left to go. Hi, Miss Monica. How are you?
Hello.
Hello. Yes, ma'am, you're audible to us.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am, you're absolutely audible to us. Meanwhile, other panelists can also check their audio if they want to.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're absolutely audible.
Looking forward to get started.
Good morning, this is Shubhajit. Am I audible?
Hi, sir. Yes, you're audible.
Perfect.
I guess. All right. So, Miss Monica, can you hear us? Are we audible to you? I guess she's facing some problem connecting. Yeah.
Are you able to hear me? I can't hear
Yeah,
you.
Miss Monica, you are absolutely audible to us, but can you hear us? Are we audible to you? Yeah, Miss Monica, please check your mic once. So meanwhile, Miss Monica is joining here. I guess she's back. So I would request everybody to kindly take the poll till then. And yes, Miss Monica, are we audible? See, we can hear you. I guess she's still facing some issue connecting. All right, so well, ladies and gentlemen, this panel discussion will be on emerging practices in managing cybersecurity and privacy in post-COVID era. So I would like to introduce all the panelists and the moderator here. Well, our moderator for the same would be Ms. Monica Jasuja, Head Product Management for Mobile Fin Solutions, Mahindra Comviva. Well, our panelist for the same would be Mr. Milind G. Mangale, EVP and CISO NSDL E-Governance Infrastructure Limited. Mr. Subhajit Dev, CISO Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. Mr. Ramachandra Hegde, CISO Genpact. Mr. Jaspreet Singh, Partner Cybersecurity EY. Mr. Harshad Mengle, CISO Future Group.
Hi, good morning,
guess,
everyone.
Good morning, sir. I would like to welcome all the panelists here. Thank you so much for taking time out of your incredibly busy schedules and joining us here. Well, we are looking forward to the great discussion with all the enhanced knowledge base that all the panelists already possess. I am waiting for the moderator to join us back. I guess she's facing some issue with the laptop and the internet. So till then, I would request the panelists to kindly begin a little discussion and maybe on the topic like what this discussion is going to be about. And I guess Miss Monica is back. Miss Monica, can you hear us now? Miss Monica, are we audible to you? Miss Monica, could you please check your mic once? See, because I guess your mic is on and we can hear the background music from your screen. So would you please say something?
Hi.
So that we can actually.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, lovely.
Finally, you joined us here. We're absolutely delighted to have you here, ma'am. Over to the moderator. Ma'am, we are looking forward for the discussion. All the panelists have already joined us here. So over to you now.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Really happy to host you all into this session and welcome. So before we actually start, a quick, I'm sure the introduction has been done, but this is one of the most important topics in the post-COVID era. And as we are still tiding through this crisis, it's important to really understand what are some of the challenges that are ahead of us. So I'll start the panel off with one of the most important questions, which is on everyone's mind. What are the cyber threats that are heightened by COVID-19 and how are we protecting against them? Therefore, I'm going to address this question to each of the members on the panel, starting with Milind first.
Yeah, very good afternoon to all of you. And thank you very much, Monica, to start the panel with this question. It is an excellent topic to discuss. In the meanwhile, Monica, could you please put yourself on mute? I think there is an echo from your side. And basically, if you look from the point of view of this question, what has heightened the threats, or because of COVID-19, what has changed? And let us start by asking ourselves a question. Is there any new type of an attack which has been discovered during this period? Is there something which has happened which was unknown prior to COVID-19? The answer most of you and many of you will give is no, for a very simple reason that old kind of attacks and old kinds of exploits are being used to increase the attack surface, and that is due to the changing situation. Let us look at what is happening with the core of the organization. Core of the organization, the central site was always fortified and is still fortified. What has changed is the operations of the organization. Earlier, the organization used to operate from a space which could be monitored, and suddenly it had to be moved in various places, the homes of the employees, which cannot be so well monitored. And not only that, it was all done in a very hurried manner. And that is the reason why basically, if you see, that is what basically has led to an green field or kind of an empty space for the attackers to come out and try out older exploits. And the weakest link, which was earlier there, has become more weaker, and that is the human factor, the employee part of it. And exactly that is what basically has been exploited during this time of COVID. What has taken a rise, if you look at the statistics that few of the research organizations have published, if you look at the reports that few of these research organizations have submitted to industry, the increase has happened into phishing. Most of the time it is the phishing attack which has taken a rise, apart from the other frauds which we will discuss during the later part of our panel discussion. But here main thing is with regards to phishing. And that is what has primarily tried to be exploited by the attackers. So what can be done about is that first and foremost thing, awareness has to be increased. People have been given training, but now they have live examples to use in the training. That has to be done. The second thing is, most important thing is that as this whole setup of moving the operations to the homes of the employees was done in a very hurried manner, organizations have to now undertake a mechanism to audit, inspect as to how the whole setup is performing. If need be, critical users' home setup has to be also inspected from outside, seeing if there are any weaker passwords on their Wi-Fi router, if there are any exploitations possible. And most and the biggest challenge that the organizations will have to do is their monitoring rules. They will have to change their monitoring rules, because whatever monitoring rules were there earlier will now completely go for a toss, and a totally new pattern is going to be emerging. So that is what I would like to say from my side.
Ram, what about you? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so if you break this into two dimensions, there's the aspect of what's changed from the threat landscape. And there are both cross-industry trends, like increase in COVID-based phishing, like Milind talked about. And that could be implications for certain industries. So you hear about increased ransomware attacks on healthcare and so forth. So it's incumbent on all organizations to do a proper risk and threat modeling specific to their context and in their business. The other dimension is really, and Milind touched upon that, is what has changed in the organization's security posture as the organizations move very swiftly to deal with the changes here. So you could have organizations who have had to make very rapid changes, maybe spring up new VPN devices or internet facing, deploy new technology and so forth. And then probably the rigor that used to be there in change control has been absent. So it's really incumbent on organizations to go back and take a look to make sure the right controls are in place. Second, we are seeing that this change is accelerating a big shift on digital transformation and cloud adoption. And it's being done rapidly for the right reasons. But again, aspects which are relevant, particularly like configuration controls, if not managed carefully, can make the organization more vulnerable. But third, it's likely that organizations, as they switch to being cloud enabled, are deploying different security technologies. Again, in a hurry. And it's extremely important to make sure the security teams understand these technologies and deploy it effectively. It's not just about deploying a technology, it's about getting the value out of it, because nothing is really as bad as having the false sense of security. So these are the three things I would offer.
Understand. That's actually very insightful. What about you, Subhajit? What are your thoughts on this?
Everyone. So I think each one of us are experiencing this very, very unusual time. And we know the threats we are experiencing as well. In terms of protection, especially at this particular time, I would peg my money on awareness. See, because users are not behind the traditional security defenses right now. Very different environment from where they're operating, working from home, which is a whole new ballgame altogether. We're just not used to it. And then there is this stress of this very, very unusual time, lockdown, no social life, and so on. So at this time, the propensity to have the guards down is very, very real. So even a very simple fish can easily go undetected and user would fall prey to it, giving away the credential. So I think that is number one. Second is because our devices are being so different right now. There are unmanaged devices. They're coming from whole different networks. People are using their own devices at all. So the importance of having conditional as well as contextual access being granted to the corporate applications and corporate data sources is even more important at this point in time. Because the velocity of the threats are so high right now all over the industry. Some of the industry sectors are specifically being targeted right now. I think this is also the time organizations should leverage a lot on the threat intel, not just from a dedicated source, but also open source from the peers, from the industry group. This is the time to deepen the ties and increase the collaboration. Lastly, and I think this is the true litmus test of any organization. Are their controls good? Will they hold up in case of a real attack? Is to put them through some kind of red teaming or a black box or a gray box assessment. The only way to figure it out if your controls are good enough is to put them through that fire of test. And I think these are a few things which organizations should do at this point in time to ensure that they are safeguarding their resources and their assets.
Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. Jaspreet, are you able to hear us? Hey, Jaspreet, are you able to hear us? Okay, there seems to be some connection issue here, but I'll move on to Harshad. Harshad, from your side of the organization and where you are in retail, which is obviously seen a very large uptick in terms of rapid digital transformation and adoption in these times, what are your views on this, and what are we going to see in the pre, post, and the COVID data that we are going through right now?
Yeah, thanks, Monica. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Yeah. So I think Milind, Shubhadip, and even Ramchandra said rightly, the era is not new to us. The attack surface has definitely increased. But during this period, what we have seen is like people are working from home. There is a good amount of challenge, like your bandwidth. So public, I would say, is a home network is also a public network. But yes, so your entire work from home is allowing a lot of other attacks to happen through the channel, home channel. Now your bandwidth is shared. Bandwidth is shared across schooling is now happening from same bandwidth. Cooking classes are happening from the same bandwidth, and the critical infrastructure monitoring, or also the meetings, are also happening through that same bandwidth. So I see there are a lot of enterprise level security controls which we have in our Wi-Fi needs to be extended to the home network. So this is something which I see is basically is the most important challenge. Second point is basically a lot of companies, they started giving work from home, allowing people to use their own devices. Now if those assessments are not correctly done, and if they allow some kind of vulnerable assets to use some of their enterprise related work, then there will be a challenge once the malware attack, phishing attacks will go undetected. There are many chances of happening that. Third is once the entire lockdown is over, if your assets are protected, well protected enough, and once you hook on from home network to the enterprise network. Now, if those network, those devices, endpoints are properly sanitized, I think the challenge is like all the malware which are sitting on the machines. If you haven't protected them, like USB is disabling, Bluetooth disabling, even the doing antivirus updates and VPN updates properly, software patching and all that. I think once you connect, and if those machines are not properly updated, these are vulnerable machines. So post connecting these all, post this COVID era, once you connect all these machines, there could be a challenge that enterprise might face some severe issues, dealing with malwares and ransomwares.
Absolutely. Harshad, we've lost your video. Are you able to still hear us? We can hear you though.
Yeah, I can see you, and I think my video is also on.
Okay, no worries. Actually, this brings me to my next question, and I'm going to address it to you. which is in your side of the world, what have you seen are ways to be able to get unlawful access to both data as well as to machines, and what are you doing in order to prevent this?
See, I think strong information protection hygiene, I would not say IT security, but information protection hygiene is very much required. In last couple of months, I would say, what we have seen is vendors are getting breached, suppliers, service providers are also getting breached. So we need to ensure that who has access to our data. So that is the most important piece, in my opinion, as far as retail and supply chain management companies are concerned. Primarily, I think more importance should be given to the data-oriented security architecture. So who has access to what data? So authentication is the most important. Authorization is the next important thing, and the continuous assessment, which you always, of course, every organization does infrastructure, IT application, assessment. But I think any change in the business, how these businesses are using IT services, is there any kind of a shadow IT? Is there any kind of a architectural change? So even the change management process has to be thoroughly checked. Any marketing. So what we have seen is marketing team doing a lot of promotional activities. Putting some kind of surveys on cloud-hosted environment, taking a lot of data from customer. Is it actually really protected? Is it actually having enterprise class security? These are certain things which I think are very much important. The second part of is basically more of a preventive, detective, and corrective. So there are chances of toxic combinations. So getting your authentication getting compromised, your identities are getting compromised. Monitoring of your VVIPs, VIP credentials are very much important. At the same time, what kind of a attack threat, attack vectors are happening from external world, that has to be monitored and needs to be taken care of. So you need to have a dashboard which actually gives us a picture of what kind of a threat I'm today carrying, what kind of governance model we have, and how we are actually frequently fixing those vulnerabilities. So that's one part of it. And then second is basically, whenever there is a security, I think security has to be built in the design itself. So every organization does VAPT. But at the same time, I think organization also needs to ensure that all securities are taken care right in the design phase. So how you're actually segregating your legacy applications, what kind of a change management policies, and are you ensuring that all changes which are going through, even if it is an admin access, privileged access request, how you are actually assessing those? Do you have tools and processes are in place to ensure that all the monitoring of those privileged accounts is happening? These are some of the important things which I think are very much essential. And the third and most important piece which I want to discuss is basically, what if your organization is undergoing any kind of a ransomware attack? So you need to have alternative or redundant some kind of a conference providing facility, where actually if the primary conferencing facility is getting breached, there should be a provision to switch on to alternative conferencing facility, so that incident management processes are well taken care of. So as even Sabijit mentioned earlier, a strong attack simulations scenarios you need to have. Definitely patch management hygiene you need to have. Also, we need to ensure that OT integration, IT OT integration in many organizations. I've seen even in our organization, there are we also use a lot of OT devices. So integration has to be also considered for the entire architecture review, security architecture review. These are some of few points which I think are very much important during this COVID situation.
Ram, what do you do in your organization? How have you been handling this?
I would just echo what Harshit has been saying. It's really about maintaining the discipline on basic hygiene, doing the risk assessment to figure out what's really changed, and the same principles which are fundamental to security, having multiple layers, prevention, detection, response, recovery, adapting it to the new model. That's really it. I'm sorry, I'm unable to hear you, Monica.
Has been speaking on mute, but I wanted to bring another important question of you, specifically addressing this to Ram. We've been talking a lot about security, but we know that not many of us are actually trained in new security protocols. And more importantly, what is this whole new regime that we all need to get accustomed to? So what are you doing in your organization to be able to manage security training and the protocols that come in the whole digital transformation era that we are in right now?
Right. Yeah, so it's you touch upon an extremely critical aspect, and I think it's really about adapting what all of us have in place to the circumstances. So I'll talk of basically 5 themes. One is training, which is specific to the general threats we have talked about. An example would be that be vigilant on COVID team phishing. A lot of us have internal phishing assessments that we do. So it's leverage that process to make it more relevant, right? To do phishing, in utilizing the same templates that the attackers are actually using. Second is training, which is very contextual to the new persona of the employee. So if someone is working from home, what are the things that are relevant? Things about securing your home Wi-Fi. Everybody's using collaboration technologies like Zoom and Teams, and there's a lot in terms of configuration which the users need to be aware of to manage controls there. There could be training that is relevant to new security constructs that are being deployed. So examples could be, and Arsha talked about low bandwidth and so forth. So if that's a challenge for deploying patches, maybe the guidance should be, hey, keep your machine on longer, right? Or if an organization is using a VPN to say, look, log on to the VPN to allow the controls to slow down. Fourth aspect is it's important to reiterate with employees to report security incidents because it's possible that maybe you lost some telemetry with the deployment of and distribution of assets. So it's very critical to leverage the employees as eyes and ears to say, hey, if you see anything unusual, here's how you should contact the InfoSec team and so forth. The fifth aspect, which is really more important, is all of this messaging has to be effective. And one good way of doing that is making it very relevant to what's important to the employee and then maybe in their personal life, right? This works all the time for security awareness in general, very relevant now. So phishing attacks relevant for the enterprise, but equally relevant for employees in their personal life about maybe getting their financials exposed and so forth. Things like mobile security is a thing a lot of employees relate to because they're worried. If you're deploying controls like multi-factor authentication, if you talk of multi-factor in the context of, say, the employee's personal email and their Gmail or security of their social media accounts, you probably get a lot of good reaction because in general, people want to do the right thing. So it's really about making the training relevant and then raising the baseline of the behavior. So then the employee gets the benefit in their personal life and then the corporation benefits in the enterprise. So those are the five key things I would say.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Milind, I'd also like to address this question to you because, you know, in your organization, you're handling data worth millions and billions of people, and more importantly, parameters that are extremely critical, not only for our own well-being, but for many other reasons that, of course, we would like to discuss later when we address a question to you. But how are you managing this new regime? Because the security associated with it, just like Ram said, and to support him, it's not going to be easy to tell people to take care of basics that we think we already know about. So how are you managing this huge exercise on your side?
So first and foremost thing, unlike earlier days where we used to have some classroom trainings, where we used to have some face-to-face trainings, those all have gone out of the window. Now, whatever will happen through an asynchronous way of communication, such as emails or messages, or it would happen through online trainings. But most important thing of all is that we have got to revisit the entire training content itself. For example, in earlier days, just giving you a very small example, with a great rigor, there used to be a training around clear desk and clear screen policy. Now, that clear screen and clear desk policy within the organization, on your desk, when you're sitting in your cubicle is okay. But when you're at your home, it completely changes the situation over there. The dynamics of that policy are really not that much of important. Whereas some other kind of training is required to be covered as a security. For example, people have rampantly gone and adopted the various video conferencing tools. Just because the companies have given 3 months free license, 6 months free license, and they have simply gone and adopted that. As a practice, because it is something new, just to keep a recall of it, people press that record button over there. And the entire meeting, entire discussions get recorded. Where is it stored? Does anyone who is using that know about it? And if it is a very sensitive matter which you are discussing with your colleagues, and if you use that recording button, then unless and until you download that record and delete it from wherever it is stored, you cannot say it is safe, as much as the companies who are offering that may be reputed. So this kind of content changes have to happen in the training that has to be given. That is what we are trying to adopt. That is what we are trying to also include as a part of our staff rules.
Absolutely. Milind, I'd also wanted to discuss one other piece that is very high on my mind. As we're taking to digital technology in general, we've also seen a lot of attempts to obviously compromise both either the user information, payment information, any financial information, or even any critical information, which is PII. Now, given this whole era where phishing attacks, cybersecurity attacks are rampant, and there are even countries which seem to attack and organize these kind of attacks, and there is vigilance, of course, that is already in place. But I wanted to specifically address how are you managing this, and what are some of the existing trends that you see are going to become larger and more predominant in the landscape versus what is right now happening, which technology is actually assisting. While it's making our lives very easy, it's also assisting in this technology assisted fraud trend that we've recently seen.
So basically, it's a very good question, because most of the individuals, I'm not saying organizations, most of the individuals are getting targeted because of this technology assisted frauds. Of course, if they get targeted, obviously there is somewhere that risk will slip over to their organizations also. So let us look from the point of view of what is actually happening. 3 things. We must understand people are stressed, as Ramchandra said. There is a lot of stress around because of no social life, because of the anxiety of what would happen to himself or the family members, because of something which may not be so pleasant with some relatives or some family members. The second thing is that quite a few people have a lot of time on hand, especially in the city like Mumbai, where people used to spend anywhere between 3.5 to 4 hours traveling just to reach work and return back. All that 4 hours have suddenly become free for them. So there's a lot of time in hand. And the third and the most important thing that we must also remember is that unfortunately this COVID-19 has brought in some unpleasantries, like people have lost their job, or people are scared of losing their job just because of the murmurs and rumors that are going on within their organization. And these are the 3 things which these people are trying to target. What are they doing? They are trying to use messaging platform to be able to convince a person to give certain information which is not trackable. For example, if one receives a message on WhatsApp and asks for your entire resume, and if you attach your resume and send it on WhatsApp, as much as monitoring, scrutiny and everything is available, there is no way how even certain will be able to figure out that your personal information has gone out. And if such kind of messages are sent to 10,000 people, even 2,000 people respond, it is a very big number, I must say. So from that point of view, the second thing is sympathy. If you lose someone, obviously when someone asks for help, you are bound to help. Now that person may be impersonating, that fraudster may be impersonating someone, knowing. Unfortunately, we go and post a lot of things on our social media, and so the fraudster is able to link some real life incidences which can easily be used to send you an customized, crafted message. Like a friend of yours who has gone out because of this COVID, and suddenly he puts up a message to you asking for money and even sends you an UPI ID, and you transfer it. unknowingly. Similarly, people have received mails from their bosses asking to transfer 50,000, 20,000, and they have transferred that. The third exploitation that is happening as far as these online frauds are concerned is with regards to the only recourse that you have is your Paytm or your credit cards, and message threatening you that your KYC is not done, so your Paytm will stop working. That is very famous. Everyone knows about it. And the fourth and most important thing in this whole thing is with regards to gaming, because you have a lot of time. They will lure you into some kind of gaming sites telling you we are giving you 2,000 rupees free bonus to just enroll yourself and start gaming. Many a times people call up and say that, look, I already have a friend of mine who has taken money from you and I already have to pay him. So he has told me that instead of paying him, I will pay you. So please let me know your UPI ID and I will pay it to you. Now, you have never remembered anyone, you don't remember having given any money to anyone, but paisa aa raha hai, let the money come in. Why will you say no to it? So in this process of I will give, actually is telling you I will take, and instead of approving and receipt, you are actually approving a payment. And that is how these online frauds are taking care. And these all are technology assisted. These all are known to us. What they are doing is they are only exploiting the emotional, psychological, and sympathetic nature of human being. And that is also one of the very important factors. I don't know, while we teach our people about information security and cyber security and all these kind of things, I think there has to be some training aspects of how to deal with such things psychologically and emotionally.
That's a very, very important point that you bring up. I think it's also about the associated knowledge and learning that we each need to be putting both time and effort, both on the personal as well as at the organization level, to increase the digital awareness and knowledge associated with all forms, whether we are using it for payments, receiving, or even using anything which is considered PII. But again, this is something that I'm wondering from the retail point of view. Harshad, how are you managing this? Because some of the frauds that we are talking about are in the consumer space. But on the retail side, it's a very different proposition and a very different consumer who is coming to your stores. How are you managing this?
Yeah, so as I rightly said, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So as I rightly said, we have taken a data-oriented approach, data security-oriented approach. So any data, whether it is in a physical or a digital format, we are ensuring that the data, first of all, access to the data is limited. First, when we get this data, it has to be minimized. So we are not taking all the data. Only relevant information is basically considered for the churning of the data. Third is the most important piece, again, the analytics. A lot of teams are doing analytics. So who is allowed to do what kind of analytics, whether this kind of algorithms are really, we should control, what kind of algorithm we are developing. So how we are controlling that actually IP of those algorithms. And then the last is who is actually going to view this data. So if it is getting exported in an Excel file, we have to ensure that that Excel file should have some kind of a password protection, or first of all, it should not get exported into Excel. If it is required, then only it has some kind of a mechanism to control the access. Second, whatever data which is confidential as per the policy should be some kind of a masking. So encryption tools we use frequently to mask most critical data. So because as you know, we are gathering a lot of data and like who is buying what and how much quantity. So there's of course there's a analytics which actually we work on. So we need to, or rather we are ensuring that all that data is protected and only authorized people have that access to that data. So of course that is these are some of the techniques which we are using today. So there is a high reliance on the process maturity and on the tool as well. So this is how actually we are managing today.
Very insightful. Subhajit, I'd like to address the same question to you as well, because again, we don't pay a lot of emphasis on data, and we are happy to pass on especially our medical data to almost every single person, which also includes our Aadhaar card and anything else that is asked. But typically, the kind of data that you're dealing with on your side, which is obviously very proprietary and very personal, how are you managing both the security aspects as well as the associated fraudulent attempts that are made to either get access to this data, which I'm sure is running into the billions of data bytes?
Yeah, so one of the trends which
we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. No.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So one of the trends which we are seeing these days is the synthetic identity fraud. And when I talk about identity fraud, it is also about the PII as well as the SPI or the health information as well. So synthetic fraud is a combination of various fictitious pieces of information and sometimes real world information mixed in as well to kind of create a new identity altogether. And this is very distinct from the traditional identity fraud in which a fraudster would simply steal the identity of another real person, which is relatively easier to catch because it directly affects another person. However, in case of a synthetic identity fraud, because there are so much of data dumps, so much of breaches which have kind of compounded the problem, because anybody has access to a paste bin or any of the darknet or deep web forums where you can buy large volume of raw PII and SPI information, by which it's very easy to construct a synthetic identity. And then using this identity, there are several different attacks which are getting crafted. One is, of course, which we are predominantly seeing is about the credit system being manipulated through the credit application process. Specifically from the health information, what we are also seeing is many times this information is being traded very it's a very lucrative business right now to trade those health information. And along with that, we are also seeing a trend where people are being targeted specifically with scams and phishing campaigns. So if I know that you are a diabetic and you are on a particular drug, which is an anti-diabetic or an oncology kind of a drug, it helps me to customize something which is very, very closer to you. And generally, like Milind was talking about, psychology is what gets stoked whenever a fraudster or a scamster crafts an attack. And if it is something close to your heart, you know that you're taking a particular medication, you're a patient of a particular disease or a lifestyle syndrome, you are very, very vulnerable to click and give away information. We are seeing not only email bold attacks, but also a lot of these attacks which are coming through fake mobile applications. There are a lot of those apps which are being touted as a patient support program. If you're a cancer patient and you want to have patient support in forms of diet, counseling, nutrition, and so on and so forth, all these apps actually churns and harvests a lot of these health information, and then it goes back and it gets sold out, and then new attacks are being crafted. So it's a rapid rise of these data points. The only way to protect it is to ensure you follow the data wherever it goes, following the best practices like masking, pseudo-anonymization of the data, ensuring that the right people has got right access to it, and partial scrambling of the data goes a long way. So following the best practices is what I think is supposed to be done.
I'd like to stay on this and wanted to also discuss and just take this and dovetail them on my next question into what you just left us with, which are we are in this rapid and accelerated hyper growth phase associated with both digital transformation activities as well as digital behavior of both consumers and businesses being changed primarily because of COVID. So what are some of the key aspects of cybersecurity that you are taking care not only at the organization level at the moment, but what you have already planned for post 2020, for example?
Yeah, so we are in a very unusual status, and every business has changed. So look at a financial organization or even a pharma, right? A majority of our workforce are the boots on the ground, people who goes out, talks to medical practitioner or a doctor, pushes those prescriptions, talking to the patients. Same as the case for insurance and banking as well. A lot of your direct sales agents are actually going out and talking to people. Now, all that is gone because of the lockdown, right? So people are relying back onto the digital method. And with digital, the attack surface goes high, the risk landscape becomes even more higher and larger, right? Now, there are two ways to do security. One is overlay an encapsulated version of security in everything you do. Or the second way, which is often the case, is something gets built and you apply security as a band-aid on top of it. I think that has been perennially the challenge. And then when organization gets into an overdrive to do digital transformation to meet the business requirements, one very key risk that emanates out of all of this is shadow IT. IT security, data privacy teams would not know a business team, and because of the cloud proliferation these days, you don't need even IT support. You don't need storage, you don't need hardware, you don't need network. All you got to do is, if you have the budget, talk to a partner. They can host a website or an app of your choice in any cloud, and you are done, right? Now, so I think what is important essentially to fall back on the basics is to, can we really drive security by design and security by default as a culture? So one is the tone on the top, having the leadership actively talking about cybersecurity in the COVID time and as a very critical success factor for digital transformation. Otherwise, it's going to be fail for sure. Secondly, anything that's get built in the organization, how do we ensure that we have several rounds of reviews, right from the architecture, right from the technology stack being used, what version of technology does it historically has a lot of vulnerabilities and 0 days associated with it? How am I integrating the application with downstream and upstream applications? What's my method of authentication? What kind of access privileges am I building it? Where am I hosting it? Who will have access to? If it is a cloud, then there's a whole gamut of other changes. So I think right at the design level, if there is a very thorough assessment being done, risks are called out proactively along with the mitigation steps, and then once the application is built, then goes for a final round of testing before it is made live. I think that's the right way to really accelerate digital transformation. Now, there is also a take back for security professionals like us. Many of the times, IT would not come to security because we simply don't understand the new technologies which are being used, right? DevSecOps is still a theoretical aspect. I don't know how many people does it, but then DevOps is very real. People are using Kubernetes, they're using Docker, they're using containers. Security teams has to scale up and understand that. Only then they will be on the same platform working as a co-creating teams to help driving those digital transformation. But I will really fall back on the basics of really promulgating security by design and security by default as a culture for digital transformation.
I like this whole idea of security by default. It really sounds like one of those buzzwords that's really going to hit off. But I'd like to also address one big elephant in the room that we haven't talked about as much right now, which is about both automation as well as AI and ML, which is rather demonized because of all the associated negative impact associated with loss of jobs, etc. But I wanted to address this because these technologies are also going to help us actually fight off these cybersecurity attacks. So if I could go to you, Milind, would you let us know what and how you have been looking at AI, ML, and technologies of the future, and how are they being leveraged both at the enterprise level currently for you, and then what are your thoughts around both the future as well as aspects that you think are going to negatively impact how we are doing things right now?
So first and foremost thing is that today the kind of traffic overload that is happening on the security monitoring infrastructure is beyond the human reach. And that is where you require an automated way to have engines to correlate these events, being able to not only identify which one of them are a threat and which one of them are possible threats, but also to weed out which are not important or which are not applicable as far as the security posture is concerned. Now, one of the things that is important is to identify these. You need to learn the patterns, and you can learn the patterns over a period of time. Organizations have a matured monitoring system because they have spent a lot of time learning the patterns and identifying which patterns are legitimate and which patterns are malicious, or what kind of anomaly can be detected out of changing patterns. Now, considering the current situation, this all happened so suddenly that people had no option but to go and relax certain monitoring parameters, because if they would not do that, then their already learned patterns would become counterproductive for the people to work. AI and ML is the tool which can be used for a very fast learning of emerging patterns and adopting those patterns from the point of view of monitoring the security. And I think that is exactly what we also plan to do. Because what you might have spent learning 2 to 3 years and identifying what is the kind of a right use case to monitor and what kind of rules you should be setting for that monitoring is no more holding valid. Now the changing patterns, if you have decided that, okay, the same journey will be again crossed, you don't have 2 to 3 years to go and learn the new pattern. Within that time, lot would have gone and you don't know what would be the implications of it. So from that point of view, I believe AI and ML will help in learning new patterns very fast, identifying what are the patterns which you need to really look at and how to go about creating. In fact, AI can help in creating certain use cases also, learning new patterns and identifying what use cases were created for old pattern. AI can help you create new use cases. Ultimately, human brain is required to identify whether those use cases are of any material gain or not. Otherwise, there will be a lot of false positives within the system, and there will be a lot of administrative overhead on the already stressed administrators. I think that is what I am basically looking at. We have already started some journey towards that direction, and in times to come, it will be a routine thing within not only ours, but most of the organizations.
That makes a lot of sense. This brings me to my next and almost last question for the day today, which is how we are in challenging times also in terms of both cost and revenue. We have to optimize our cost. Now the question is, how do you keep the cost of cybersecurity low, but keep cybersecurity topmost of the agenda? What are, Ram, I'd like to address this to you to begin with.
So I think the larger question is, if you look at security from a risk management perspective, right? So it's really about getting clarity on what's really the risk to the organization, and what's the best way to mitigate it. So you have to apply the lens slightly differently. I think a lot of us tend to be control focused. So we should pivot towards being risk-based and saying, okay, what are the risks that we're trying to manage here, and where do we get the most bang for the buck? And that also involves looking and trying to map the value of the controls. And then once you do that, I think it sort of becomes very clear that, okay, here's the risk, here's what I'm getting in terms of the value from this control, which is driving down risk and is mitigating. So that's the approach I would say all of us have to follow, and then make it a larger discussion and not just about, okay, how do I take 20% cost out of it?
Absolutely, that's absolutely right. Harshad, what about you?
See, in my,
because while retail is growing, I'm sure there is a lot of emphasis also on trying to keep the cost low. So how are you really managing this trade-off?
Yeah, so in my opinion, I think cost pressure is there. And
Harshad, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. So in my opinion, I think the cost pressure is going to be there. And in a longer term, I think we just need to find some quick wins, quick solutions to, understand how we can actually, make the entire model into more of a automated way. Like if we add some automation, of course, there will be lesser cost on the resources. Resources are expensive. When I say resources, people are expensive, and knowledgeable people are very expensive and very difficult to get. So I think if we can build some kind of automated way or artificial intelligence into the cybersecurity world, I think there will be less, less dependency on the people and more dependency on system. There is a positive and negative side of it, but I think the only way is basically allow startups to look into the what they are, what they can actually, what kind of value they can provide, and probably we can also get a good cost-effective solutions through startups.
Absolutely, that makes that's an incentive for startups to start looking at cybersecurity a little bit more seriously than they are doing right now, because it's not one of those celebrated areas. Subhajit, what about you?
I'd like to add a couple of points over here.
Yes.
One is that, as much as we talk about the cost, we should not forget that there is a lot of saving happening due to electricity. Offices are closed down. People have also surrendered some of their rental premises, so they have saved costs there. Travel for business is not happening. There are no air flights. There are no hotel stays. So there's a lot of saving over there also. So we all can afford to tell our management that as you are anyway saving, it is better don't cut cost on the security. That is the core of your business now.
No, absolutely. And that is the whole, I think we sometimes forget that in the trade-off between cybersecurity and cost, what are we actually saving? Because it's very hard to put a dollar value to the costs associated with the lack of cybersecurity attacks that happen. It's always easier to put a value on the millions of dollars that are lost because of attacks. So, Bajit, you're in a hyper growth phase with medicine becoming front and center of our entire existence right now. And therefore, the cost of cybersecurity for you should be rising. How are you managing these tough times?
See, the consideration for cost has been there, and I see it's going to continue. Yeah, but then security is binary. Either you do it for all well, or you don't do it at all. So the prioritization of your specific risk has to be very clear and based on the risk. One easy approach is to really use the lens of Pareto. What is your top 10, 20% of the key risk of your organization? And then try and focus that, because evidently you will not be able to control your 100% of your risk. But then there has to be a very intelligent evaluation of the risk versus reward, and you should go and look at the top 20% risk and mitigate them first. Another important consideration is also, we have so many security solutions been deployed right now. How often do we go back and really see what is the ROI or the ROSI of each one of them? We seldom. We just add one layer after another. So I think it's an important consideration to go back and see what has been deployed right now, match it with your rate of occurrence, with your annualized loss expectancy, and understand, does it make sense in either an all-out elimination of a product which has been used for a long time, which is probably monolithic, very rigid, not very flexible, and then bring in something which is more flexible, has a primary use case, but also a secondary and tertiary use case as well. For example, if I need to do a cloud proxy and a web DLP and data anonymization or tokenization and still do shadow IT governance, do I bring in 4 solutions, or bring a CASB which can do all 4 of them? So that level of need versus want versus desire, and the long-term view has to be considered while optimizing the cost. And I think it's a game which you'll have to play, even in the months coming by.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. So before we end the panel, one quick 10-second answer from each one of you. Long after this panel is gone, cybersecurity is important. How do you keep cybersecurity top of the agenda? 10 seconds each. So I'll start with Milind.
So the only thing that I would like to say is that being paranoid and always thinking that the entire world is out there only to attack my organization is the only thing that can help you keep cybersecurity on the top of the agenda. And don't only be paranoid yourself, but also make sure that all in your organization are also sensitized of it, and they are also equally paranoid. But at the same time, I would also like to advise that sometimes in these moments or in this period of stress, being paranoid itself can be counterproductive. So don't take stress of this. You should know that this paranoia is for a healthy reason. And that healthy reason should not lead to health issues of individual, blood pressure and anxiety and all that. Eat healthy, do some exercise. Don't just sit in front of the television, and think about the security of your organization whenever you have free time, is what I would like to say.
Thank you. That was very insightful. Ram, what about you?
It's important to bring clarity and then communicate from a risk perspective, because there's still a lot of what we say FUD and hype in the industry. And I think when you distill that and express what is the risk we are really talking about here, what is the downside, and communicate that effectively, that helps it real, that helps it to be relevant, and then it will probably be the only thing that can sustain the attention and interest over time.
Absolutely. So,
I think one area where over communication does not hurt is cybersecurity. One has to customize communication at a strategic level, a tactical level, as well as an operational level for all 3 different stratas within the organization. Bring in the outside in approach, talk about data, show the cost of a lost data record and a cost of breach, and then show what you are doing. I think over communication is something that is very, very important. Everybody has to get oversensitized, and this would not hurt cybersecurity.
Absolutely. Harshad, last wise words from you.
Yeah, so I think post-COVID situation, business will start So in my opinion, the entire operational staff has to be, of what is, most important from a security aspect. And second, even the businesses should be, should understand how the market is moving, what kind of a threat vectors are generated, like Twitter one, and how we can protect. So building, or rather bringing the security expert right during the new, business ventures, I think is very much essential.
Absolutely. I'd like to address a few questions. Namrata, should I go ahead?
You can take only one question since we're already running out of time.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. So Terence asks that in my team, we are monitoring all security compliance via Splunk portal. Just wanted a confirmation that we are going on the right path. Would any of you want to take this?
I'll take that.
Sure.
So Terence, Splunk is a good, definitely if you're using Splunk, I think you're not doing anything wrong. But Splunk by itself is not magic. It is very necessary that you have to create appropriate use cases and have appropriate correlation rules to be able to make maximum out of it. So if you are monitoring using Splunk and only some out of the box rules, I don't think it will be effective enough. Then you are not on the right path. But if you study your traffic, you have understood your business, and around that, if you have created appropriate use cases, and then you have built the rules to monitor that, I think you are on the right track.
Absolutely. This is an extremely insightful panel, I think, for all of us. I learned a lot. And I've always heard that we should keep our, we should think about our businesses or our organization's money as our own when we are spending. But thanks to each one of you, I think we will have to think about cybersecurity, both for ourselves as well as for our organizations every time we're using any digital device. It was a pleasure really hearing you. Over to you, Namrata.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, ma'am. That was a really wonderful discussion. I would like to thank all the panelists and the moderator for conducting this very nuanced discussion. Thank you so much for joining us on board. Well, I am sure that our delegates and all the participants are taking a lot from this discussion. Thank you so much once again. Well, now I guess after all this discussion, everybody must have built a healthy appetite. So we will break here for lunch. And meanwhile, participants can also network with all the delegates and the speakers, and they can take their questions there. Well, there is a networking tab provided to you to the left of your screen. If you will see, that's the fourth option, the fourth tab. You can click on networking and chat with all the delegates and the panelists, all the speakers. Well, we will be back here sharp at 1:45 for a presentation by our associate partner, EC Council. So I would request all of you to kindly join us back here at 1:45 sharp. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.